The general's hand cracked across her face like a rifle shot. The sound echoed through the North Wing mess hall, sharp and unmistakable, slicing through the clatter of metal trays and low morning chatter. 347 soldiers froze mid-motion, forks hovering, cups halfway raised, jaws locked open in disbelief. For a fraction of a second, the entire room seemed to stop breathing. Private First Class Zara Kellmont did not stumble. She did not cry out. She didn't even blink. Her head turned slightly from the force, auburn hair shifting against her collar, but her boots stayed planted shoulder-width apart. Slowly, deliberately, she turned her face back toward General Augustus Thorne, the burning red imprint of his palm already rising on her cheek like a brand. Her eyes were steady, calm, almost cold, and then she spoke. "Sir, you just made a mistake." 5 words, not loud, not defiant, not emotional, just final. A ripple of unease passed through the room. Veterans who had seen combat in 3 continents felt it. Recruits fresh out of basic felt it. Even the senior officers seated near the front shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, because that wasn't how weak soldiers spoke. General Thorne, a decorated 4-star with 40 years of command etched into his posture, stared at her as if he hadn't heard correctly. His jaw tightened, the veins in his neck stood out beneath his collar. "You will address me with respect," he snapped, voice booming now, filling the hall. "You think you're special, Kellmont. You think discipline doesn't apply to you." Zara said nothing. She stood at attention, hands at her sides, eyes forward, and that silence, controlled, intentional, only enraged him further. For weeks, Private Kellmont had been the Academy's favorite target. She was smaller than most of the men. Quiet, unassuming, her training scores were strange. Some days she barely scraped by, other days she exceeded benchmarks without explanation. She never bragged, never complained, never explained herself. To the instructors, that inconsistency looked like weakness. To the cadets, it made her an easy label. And to General Thorne, visiting Crimson Ridge Military Academy to observe discipline standards, she looked like a symbol of everything he hated: softness, hesitation, doubt. He had noticed her during breakfast lineup, not saluting fast enough, not meeting his eyes quickly enough, or maybe, just maybe, he had simply wanted to make an example. "You think this uniform makes you equal," Thorne continued, gesturing sharply at her fatigues. "I've buried soldiers tougher than you before lunch." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the hall. They died quickly. Zara's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped beneath her cheek. Still, she said nothing. That was when he struck her, not a backhand, not a shove, a full, deliberate slap. Open palm, shoulder behind it. The kind meant to humiliate, the kind meant to break. But something went wrong, very wrong. As the seconds ticked by, the general began to sense it, not consciously, but deep in his instincts. The room didn't react the way it should have. There were no gasps, no cries, no movement toward Zara. Instead, there was silence, heavy, watchful. Zara's breathing slowed, her shoulders relaxed, and somewhere behind her calm exterior, a switch flipped, because Zara Kellmont wasn't weak. She wasn't the struggling recruit who barely passed inspections. She wasn't the quiet girl who ate alone at the end of the table, and she certainly wasn't afraid. She was calculating, measuring distance, timing, balance. 5 seconds, that was all it took. 5 seconds for a 4-star general to go from towering authority to a man who would soon be on his knees, gasping, eyes wide with disbelief, begging for mercy from the soldier he had just humiliated. 5 seconds for everything the military brass believed about Private Kellmont to shatter like glass hitting concrete, because when General Thorne raised his voice again, when he leaned forward to deliver his next sentence, he crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And Zara Kellmont finally moved. The first second was silence, not the awkward kind, not the embarrassed kind, the kind that comes before something irreversible. General Thorne leaned forward, his shadow swallowing Zara's boots. His mouth opened to speak. Another insult, another order, another reminder of power. He never got the word out. Second two, Zara moved, not fast, precise. Her right foot slid back half a step, heel pivoting into the polished floor. Her left hand came up, not in a strike, but in a soft redirection, catching the general's wrist as if guiding a dance partner. To the untrained eye, it looked almost respectful. It wasn't. It was control. Gasps rippled through the mess hall as soldiers realized something was happening. But by the time their brains caught up, it was already too late. Second three. Zara rotated her hips and stepped inside his centerline. A quiet, efficient movement, no wasted energy. Her forearm pressed into a pressure point just below his elbow, while her other hand twisted his wrist at a brutal angle. The general's confident posture collapsed instantly as pain shot up his arm like electricity. "What the hell?" he started. The sentence ended as air left his lungs. Second four. Zara dropped her weight, not down, through him. Her knee struck the inside of his thigh with surgical accuracy, buckling his leg. At the same moment, she pulled his trapped arm forward and down, leveraging his own momentum against him. The move was clean, textbook, forbidden. General Augustus Thorne, 4-star, untouchable, feared, hit the floor on one knee with a sound that echoed louder than the slap. A sharp, involuntary gasp tore from his throat. Second five. Zara leaned in. Her forearm slid across his collarbone, pinning him in place. Her voice was low, so low only he could hear it. "Don't move," she said calmly. "If you do, your shoulder comes with me." The general froze. The mess hall erupted into chaos, chairs scraping, soldiers standing, officers shouting. But Zara's world had narrowed to one thing: control. Her breathing was steady, her grip was absolute. Thorne's face had gone pale. His free hand clawed uselessly at the floor. Let go. He wheezed. She didn't. She adjusted her stance slightly, increasing the pressure just enough to make her point. "I warned you," she said. No anger, no satisfaction, just fact, sir. That was when the unthinkable happened. General Thorne's voice broke. "I can't breathe." The room went dead silent again. 340. 7 soldiers stared at the impossible sight. The most powerful man in the academy on his knees, eyes wide with fear, reduced to instinct and pain, held there by the soldier everyone had dismissed as weak. A senior colonel surged forward. "Private, stand down." Zara didn't even glance up. "I will," she replied evenly. "When he acknowledges the assault." The colonel froze, because everyone knew what she was saying was true. Thorne swallowed hard. His pride warred with survival. Survival won. His voice cracked. "I struck you without cause." Zara eased the pressure slightly, but not enough for him to escape, and she prompted. "I violated protocol," he rasped, "and conduct." A beat. Then Zara released him. She stepped back smoothly, returning to attention as if nothing had happened. General Thorne collapsed fully to the floor, coughing, clutching his arm like it no longer belonged to him. Medics rushed in. Officers shouted orders. Camera security, training overhead, kept recording everything. Zara stood motionless amid the storm. Her cheek still burned. Her uniform was still plain. Her expression was unreadable. But something fundamental had changed, because now every single person in that room understood the truth. Zara Kellmont was not weak. She had been restrained, and General Thorne had just forced her to stop. For 10 full seconds after Zara stepped back to attention, no one spoke. The mess hall felt smaller somehow, as if the walls themselves were leaning in. General Thorne lay on the floor, coughing, medics kneeling beside him, their hands hovering uncertainly, afraid to touch him, afraid not to. Senior officers shouted orders that overlapped and contradicted each other. Recruits stood frozen, unsure whether to sit, salute, or run, and in the center of it all stood Zara Kellmont, perfectly still. Her eyes were forward, her breathing was even. If not for the red mark blooming across her cheek, she could have been mistaken for a statue. Clear the hall. A colonel finally roared, chairs scraped back. Boots thundered, soldiers were herded out in stunned silence, heads snapping back again and again to look at Zara as if she might disappear if they stopped watching her. Within 2 minutes, the mess hall was empty except for command staff, medics, and Zara. She was escorted to a small briefing room off the north wing. No cuffs, no shouting. That alone told her everything she needed to know. They were afraid. The door closed with a heavy click. 3 officers sat across from her, a colonel, a brigadier general, and a civilian in a dark suit who hadn't introduced himself. Zara recognized the posture instantly. Intelligence, not academy staff. The colonel cleared his throat. "Private First Class Kellmont, do you understand the seriousness of what you've done?" "Yes, sir," Zara replied calmly. The brigadier leaned forward. "You assaulted a 4-star general." "No, sir," she said. "I restrained him after he assaulted me." Silence. The civilian finally spoke. "You used a technique that is not taught at Crimson Ridge." "No," Zara agreed. The brigadier's eyes narrowed. "Then where did you learn it?" Zara hesitated for the first time. "Not from fear, from calculation." "Permission to speak freely, sir?" she asked. The colonel exchanged a glance with the others. "Granted." Zara reached into her breast pocket and slowly placed a thin, worn card on the table. A service identification, not Crimson Ridge, not standard issue. The room changed instantly. The civilian picked it up, his face tightening as he read the classification code stamped faintly at the bottom. He didn't slide it back right away. He looked at the brigadier instead. "She was never supposed to be here," he said quietly. The colonel blinked. "What do you mean here?" Zara spoke before the civilian could answer. 3 years ago, sir, I was recruited into a classified evaluation program, not combat, observation, stress response, behavioral masking. The brigadier's voice dropped. "You're telling us this whole performance, your low scores, your inconsistency, was intentional?" "Yes, sir." The civilian finally slid the card back. She was trained to suppress capability, to appear average, to disappear. The colonel stared at Zara as if seeing her for the first time. Why? Because people reveal their true behavior when they believe they have power over someone weaker, Zara said, especially in command environments. The words hung heavy. "And General Thorne?" the brigadier asked. Zara's jaw tightened slightly. Was a variable that exceeded acceptable limits. The civilian exhaled slowly. "You were instructed never to engage physically." "Yes, and you did anyway." Zara met his eyes because he escalated to physical assault in front of witnesses. Protocol allows immediate neutralization to prevent further harm. The brigadier leaned back, stunned. "You neutralized a 4-star general in 5 seconds. Zara said nothing. "Do you know what happens next?" the colonel asked. "Yes, sir." "What?" "My presence here will be denied. The footage will disappear. General Thorne will be medically retired or reassigned, and I will either be quietly discharged or moved." The civilian gave a thin smile. "You've read your own file?" "No," Zara replied. "I understand systems." A long pause, then the civilian stood. "Pack your things, Private Kellmont." The colonel stiffened. "She's being arrested." "No," the civilian said. "She's being reassigned." Zara's eyes flickered. "Just once." "Where?" she asked. The civilian leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Somewhere your restraint will be tested far more often." Outside the room, unseen by any of them, a junior officer stood frozen in the hallway, having heard just enough to understand one terrifying truth. The academy hadn't merely broken a weak soldier. It had nearly been exposed by someone far more dangerous than anyone realized. And Zara Kellmont was just getting started.